So thank you everyone for joining this webinar. This is yet another in a series of our webinars that we do on the Bold Construct application that is essentially a Dynamics 365 customer engagement solution. This webinar we'll be focusing primarily on the HVAC industry. And within that, rather than covering all the modules that we have talked about in the past, we'll primarily be focusing on the sales side of things and how technology can be used to get the most out of a platform as well as do the best for the business. So I want to just do quick introductions here. I think most of you already know me. I'm the VP Consulting Services here at AlphaBold. Been with this in this industry for 15 plus years, being doing consulting, have experience with Dynamics and a lot of other products. But what I'm more excited about this time around is that we are joined by David Voitko, who is the president of Voitko Mechanical, and he is one of our long-term customers. He is truly an expert when it comes to HVAC. He has been in that industry for 30 plus years, and he is part of multiple associations. He is on the board of some of them, so no other voice better than David to tell us a little bit about the HVAC industry and the problems with that industry and how technology can help with those. So I welcome you, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I also want to share with everyone that David is a little bit under the weather. He actually has COVID, and he still made an effort to join us, which is obviously huge for us. So thank you for that as well, Dave.
So just bear with me. I'm a little bit in a fog today, and I was planning on being in my office, and I'm in my dining room. So I'll do my best.
Thank you so much, David. All right, so here is the agenda for today's webinar. We will start with challenges in the HVAC industry and the challenges that are faced by the companies, how technology can help HVAC companies, and then we will talk about Bold Construct and what are the different components of it and how it can be used. We have some demos that can be used by the HVAC. They're essentially a case study for Voitko Mechanical and how they are using Dynamics as a platform. Then after those demos, we'll talk about the benefits and what we have seen with other companies within HVAC and outside HVAC, and then we'll go into question and answers. So with that, I'm just gonna jump in. It's the same kind of the order of the events that I covered in the agenda. So we'll start with the challenges. I'll take this first slide and then we'll bring in David into the discussion. So overall, there are many challenges, of course, but like I mentioned, we'll be focusing on the sales side of things. And on the sales side, what we have seen is that unless you have a system that is managing your sales process, you would have an inflated and complex sales pipeline. The biggest challenge that it poses is that you do not know what projects are in pipe, when they can be closed, and you cannot effectively plan for those. So that leads to the second issue, which is inability to track sales and marketing life cycles. You do not know how you're bringing in the business, and you're not able to track the velocity of the business, and you're not able to at least see the life cycle. So you do not have a good handle on measuring the ROI on any sales or marketing efforts that you're having. If you do not have a system, another challenge you have is that you could have incorrect estimation because pricing could change. You could be using an Excel like most of the organizations do. And they do a good job by automating some of the formulas and processes in there. But having a system where all of that could be grouped is important. The second challenge that using a third-party solution poses is that you're trying to then import that system, that information into another system. And usually there's no easy import tool available, so you're manually keying it in. And that also causes issues with the estimations then becoming incorrect. And last but not least, when you're generating proposals, there's always the chance of human error that you could key in something incorrectly. So if you have a good sales system, you can obviously not only automate the sales pipeline and the sales process, but you can also incorporate into that the whole estimation piece so that you have your streamlined estimation that is easily convertible into a proposal. And we'll show some of that as to how Voitko Mechanical and David's company is doing that. And last but not least is lack of automation. So you have lots of manual and disjointed systems and steps happening, which causes a problem because it's not an intuitive way of handling your whole sales cycle. So with that, what I want to do is I want to bring in David to the mix. We've been working with Voidco Mechanical, like I mentioned. They have been a great customer of ours, and we've had this journey together. But as an industry expert, David, where I wanted to start from was if you could give a little bit of insight from your perspective on what are some of the industry challenges that you see are faced by HVAC in general. What are some of the things that are not working for them considering COVID, post-COVID, and what do you see as the future for the HVAC and the challenges that they would have?
So that's a pretty broad spectrum question there. So I'll start from pretty general terms, and then we'll work our way down to as much detail as you want. So many of the challenges in the HVAC industry are the same challenges we see in every industry, right? Especially with the contractor world. If you say HVAC, it's very similar to electrical or to plumbing, but even compared to everything else, financial is a big issue, right? With our companies, and as they grow, our needs change. But for the most part, everything's the same. We're going through the same manpower issues that everybody's going through, right? We're having a real hard time attracting talent, getting people into our industry, getting people to stay in the industry. COVID threw a curveball. People are rethinking what they want to do, so that became a big issue for us. The supply chain, just like everywhere else, if you try to buy a car right now, you're waiting. And if you try to buy an air conditioner, you're waiting. And we're waiting for things 3 to 4 times longer than we ever have, even more. I've had to tell people that they were going to wait 1 year for an air conditioner. I've never said that before, for it to take a year to fabricate. And now we're talking about bigger systems. The economy is affecting us, right? So now we see we're going into an economic we've been in an economic downturn. They're talking about recession. That affects us, right? Our ability to close work. And then that's what's similar to the other companies. Here are some things that are specific to air conditioning. There's constant changes in technology with the systems that we work at. So we have issues with keeping up with the technology, providing training to our people. As this world changes, the geographic location of everything we do is becoming an issue. We're in Los Angeles, and the number one thing in Los Angeles is traffic. So where we're providing an hourly service to someone, where we'd send somebody out to do something that might take 15 minutes, but there's 3 hours of drive time, it's a new challenge for us, right? And it's getting worse. And so these challenges, they're constantly evolving. And then we have we have issues with pricing, inventory. We've got trucks rolling around. They're like little supply houses full of tools, tracking the tools, tracking the parts. And so they're not only unique to air conditioning, but they are very common amongst service providers.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you so much. And David, how do these challenges, specifically when it comes to on the process side, how important is the process? My first question is that from the process management as well as the definition of the process standpoint for different operational things, and how do they vary from a small HVAC firm to a large HVAC firm?
My answer is very similar to the other one. A small air conditioning company and a big air conditioning company have the same problems, the same issues, the same challenges. The problem is that the small ones just don't know that they have those issues, right? So for example, like with my own company, you start a business and you do work and you're doing it yourself and you're doing everything. You're answering the phones, you're out in the field doing work, you're cleaning the bathroom. You do absolutely everything, and you do everything good because it's your business, until you start to grow and you have to rely on people and you hire people. And then now all of a sudden you're what's important changes, right? Because now when you're hiring other people, now all of a sudden quality becomes an issue because they don't do it the way that you do it. And so to answer your question, process becomes everything at that point. And what I think one of the biggest differences in small businesses and large businesses is that they don't have, small ones don't have a process, or that this is what the process is. They do work. Someone calls and asks for a price for them to do more work. They drop everything and they scatter and they put a price together and send it out there and hope someone calls them back, and then they're on to the next job, right? And it's just one job after the next, but there's no real process to it. And if you don't have a process, then you really can't take control. And the reality is that actually works for real small business, but eventually it doesn't work, right? And what happens is if they don't build the processes early, when they become big, you have to restructure your business, and that can become tragedy. And if you really look at like success of air conditioning companies or contractors in general, most of them fail right away because of cash flow, right? So that's something that cash flow is important to everybody, right? But until you own your own company, it's like people, I always talk to people when they go to start their own company, and they tell me, they are asking me, what do I need to know starting my own company? I say, you need to understand what cash flow is. And they all say, oh yeah, I know. And they all call back later and say, it only took me about 30 days to figure it out, right? They get through one billing cycle and they run out of money. But see, so like a medium-sized company, cash flow isn't as big an issue. It's always an issue, but there's a different set of issues once a company becomes a medium, and all companies grow, right? Otherwise they're not really businesses. And so there's a point at which you have to get these processes in play, and once they do, and until they do, you're not really running your business. You're just chasing your tail.
Awesome. So essentially what you're saying is that process is obviously important, because unless you have the process, you cannot scale. It's just that because you're the only person running the shop and you're small, you don't realize that. But as soon as you maybe even start adding one or two people, you realize that you got to have the process in place, or things will start falling through the cracks.
You know, full disclosure, we didn't have a process when I met you guys. You said, hey, what's your process, right? and then Alpha Bold came down and visited our office and spent a couple days there going through and talking about our process. And I guess we kind of had we knew what to do, but we didn't have a structured process. And so we really didn't build our process until we teamed up with you guys. And that was a real eye opener to realize that, wow, we should really get these processes laid out before we do anything. Right. And so I'm not immune to that. Right. I say I'm preaching, you got to have process, but I didn't have a process. And you saw my bio, 30 plus years, and I didn't have a process. So.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So now coming to the technology side of things, how do you believe how can technology come into the play and help the HVAC industry in general and all the companies that are providing that service?
Well, when we're talking about technology as it relates to like Sales Hub and field service and these type of things, they help us primarily to be efficient. And what I mean is, we know, like when it comes to our sales process or our pipeline, we know right where everything is. And what used to happen in the past was, sometimes you wouldn't know it, but 3 people would be working on the same project, and you'd have 3 projects that were being ignored. And so we'd have a hard time getting numbers out, or we wouldn't know what's out there. We couldn't predict what we were going to need for manpower because we just, everything was on paper and it was all over. It was on Excel spreadsheets, and we were using technology, but we're talking about a whole different level of technology here, right? So, and then when you look at this platform that we're talking about, we're looking at things that go way beyond what I expected. When you talk about the Hololens technology and IoT technology and all these things, here there's really big contractors. And by the way, I'm not a big contractor, or I'm not a really small one either, but we're just kind of like a medium-sized contractor. But there's really big contractors that are chasing these technologies, and I almost feel like we're ahead of them on some of these things.
Yep.
because Microsoft kind of took the lead on it, and they're becoming common platforms across all industries. So it's made it real easy for a little company like ours to keep up with the big boys.
And what made you realize that I need to bring in technology? What was that tipping point for you where you're like, okay, there has to be a better way of doing some of these things?
Well, I had got to the point with my business where I couldn't grow.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't go home at the end of the day and relax, because I was constantly trying to make the business successful. But I had tried hiring people, and it helped to hire people, but it just created a whole new set of problems for me to manage. And so it was just kind of getting out of control. And then I started just to do some research and kind of figured out what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my next question is. How did you end up with Microsoft and Dynamics as a platform?
So I started out with Microsoft Dynamics, with the Sales Hub. And the reason I did that, because there's all these modules, right? And so you can do field service, and you can do construction, and you can do the financial. Basically, you could do a coffee shop, and you can run it off of Dynamics, or a coffee, whatever. So I started looking for, I went with a field service product way before I knew what Dynamics was. It was a low level kind of thing, just to track where the technicians were and do invoicing and things like that. And I started, I outgrew it. And when I outgrew it, we started talking to the company that reps the product, and they hadn't done like an upgrade in like 10 years. And we call them, and one day I finally got people in the office were calling and saying, we needed to do this, we need to do that. And it couldn't do anything. And so one day I called the guy myself, and he goes, listen, this is probably not the product for you. Right? We had that product for years. So I was kind of like, I need to come up with a solution here, right? So I started looking at there's a lot of CAN products, like air conditioning. You could just, here's your air conditioning software, and you can just buy this, and within 6 months you're deployed, and it's not that expensive, and relatively, and you're good to go. So we started looking into those, and we go to these trade shows, and all these people are trying to demo their products for you, and they have some really neat things. They have, if you look at all of them, everything we need was covered by somebody, but everything we need was not covered by any one company. So there was always something missing. And so what I did was, I knew somebody. My brother-in-law is very computer savvy, and he turned me on to Dynamics and SharePoint. I didn't know anything about either of them. And we have transformed our company with both of those products. And they work together seamlessly. So it's been perfect. But what I did was, I went down this rabbit hole of watching videos. There's plenty of like Microsoft has got videos on fictitious companies, and I'd watch and I'd see they'd hit everything that I needed and some. And there's little things that I'd see that they could do, like the Geo thing, where they, like, when you order food now, you can use an app, and you can watch the car drive to your house, or if you get a Uber, you can watch the Uber drive to you. And then I'm looking at Dynamics, and Dynamics can send a thing to our customer saying your technician's on his way, and they can watch him come. And it could do virtually everything we wanted it to do. So I know I'm getting kind of wordy with this, but we had to make a decision. Do we dump the field service system that we're using now and just go to Dynamics, or do we do the CRM portion of Dynamics and keep the old system, and then we can take our time switching from the old system to the Dynamics system, and we can do it ourselves or with you, and we can pick the way we want it to be done. And we're real happy with the way that's worked out.
That's awesome. And as you kind of onboarded onto the sales side, David, share a little bit about your experience. What were the challenges? And then once you were done with those challenges, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that you've already seen? And where do you see yourself going forward from there?
So when we started, when we first deployed the sales hub, I didn't have that many people that I needed to track. So I wasn't really thinking about it as like I was a sales manager. We don't, as a company, we were fortunate enough to be one of those companies that people just have always called us, right? Just trying, we put our effort into our end product, the product sells itself, and people call. But inevitably, people call and we have to respond, and so we had to hire people. So we've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 people now in there that are just doing that. So when we started with it, it was more of a just to keep track of the sales, to regulate the sales process, to make sure that everybody was kind of following the same method. And then there was a checks and balances portion. So we had a customization done where, let's say one of our estimators or a salesperson says, hey, I've got this job. They can go and they can write the job up in Dynamics. They can either decide themselves that they're going to estimate it and try and close it, or if they need to do a team approach, they can assign it to an estimator. The estimator does their portion, and then the estimator can assign it back to them, or they can, it's real flexible how they can do it. And then we built in these automations where when they get done with that process, if it's a small job, they send it to the customer. If it's a medium-sized job, it gets a second look. So it takes that job and assigns it to one of the other salespeople, and it just says, just give it a look, right? Just make sure nothing's missing. It's damage control. And then if it's over a certain threshold, then it goes to me, and I'll look at it. So if it's a $4 million job, I'm not going to have people just sending $4 million jobs out. So I'm going to give it a look and get other people involved and do. So it's created a process rather than us just writing up a proposal, not knowing what we did. And I can always go back and I can look. What's really nice is when someone asks for approval on a job, I can look, I can see exactly how they estimated. I can see what's in the job, what, you know, I can reverse engineer their estimate and tell how they got there. And if I can't, then I know there's a problem, right? Because if they can't explain it, then it's probably not a good estimate. That's worked out really good for us, and it's not what I expected at all. Because now that I have all these people doing these jobs, now I can use the dashboards and I can look and I can see how they're doing performance-wise. And that wasn't even like a distant thought for me. I know it was a distant thought for you. Because when we were going through the process, you kept bringing things up. In the future, you're going to want to be able to do this. In the future, you're going to be able to do that. Because the process isn't that unlike most other businesses. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. Another, based on what you said, something came to my mind. What about in the industry, we see that some of the folks are not very tech savvy. So when you implemented that process and you started training them, what were some of the challenges that you ran into, and how did you kind of work around those challenges?
It really wasn't that hard. I mean, I wish I could tell you we went through this process of training and all. The training was minimal. We built that. That's the nice thing about the system is it's what we built, right? It's what we wanted. So like all the little buttons and all the things, they're the buttons we wanted in there. So we know exactly what they do. So when we have like a new dispatcher or a new salesperson, we just run them through it, and it's been pretty. There's a couple things, right? There's a couple things that we have to provide training for, and they might ask questions on, but not. And trust me, these are not MIT graduates, right? We're talking about. I mean, they're smart people, but they're not computer science people. So they're just regular, working people, and they don't seem to have a problem finding their way around it. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then once you learn a module, and then you get another module, the layout's the same. So when you need to go find accounts or customers or opportunities, it's all. You go module to module and you don't even realize you're in a different module.
Awesome. And I know that you you're focusing right now on the sales side, but I also know that there are other modules that you're using. So can you just share for the benefit of the audience that what you have achieved so far and what's your vision with the whole platform?
Ooh, that's a big one for a question. So we are almost ready to deploy field service. I mean, it's built and we're just running tests on it, and I just want it to be perfect, right? And I feel pretty confident that nobody has anything like it. It covers our industry from one end to the other. It does things like this. So we have trucks, and the trucks have inventory. So we have an API built that goes between one of our suppliers. And when a tech uses a part off of his truck, that part gets replenished. So you click on that part, the pricing comes right. It's updated pricing right away from the supplier. And there's some suppliers that have almost everything. We don't have every supplier in there, but one good supplier has most everything that we have. And we've got a solution to track what's in these trucks. It's pretty incredible. I'll tell you, one of the big stumbling blocks for an air conditioning company is you have all these technicians out in the field. They go out to work on something, they find a problem, and they don't get approval on the spot, and they need approval. So in the past, what they did, I mean, back in the paper days, they wrote the note on their service ticket and they turned it in, and hopefully someone caught it. Most of the time they didn't, and it get forgotten. Lost opportunity, right? Or they'd call, and they'd call some estimator or salesperson in the office who's busy, and same thing. There's no way to track it, lost opportunity. So what we've done is, and I guess this kind of goes beyond dynamics, but we saw something special that we needed. We needed the techs to be able to be in the field on a call with an open work order and send a proposal and use their iPads or their iPhones to do it. So we worked with you guys to create an app that not only creates the proposal, but it connects it to Dynamics. It loads it in Dynamics, and then it figures out who the sales rep is, and that sales rep gets that, and it's already, the work's done. All they have to do is approve it. It even writes the proposal up. I think you have a demo of that, so you should be able to share that. But field service, we're real excited about that. We went through, so our old system, we've always used QuickBooks, like I think most of the planet, and it just wasn't. It just does the same thing. It does most of what we needed to do, but not everything. And so we were forced with this decision: do we build a bunch of connectors between Dynamics and QuickBooks, or do we just use Microsoft's product? And the glory of my Microsoft product is it's so seamless. When you go from one end of the system to the other, like I said, you feel like you're using the same system. So we had you guys build out Business Central for us. That's completed. And we're happy with the way that turned out. And then on just field service on its own is just it's massive, right? It's massive. And so what I think is important about having the right partner is you guys know what its abilities are. We don't use all the abilities. You guys kind of hone it down and make it look like it's not that big, right? But it can do things that I never dreamed that it can do. And one of the things that we're real anxious to do is the what's it called, the Hololens?
HoloLens, yeah.
So and that's when I was doing my research, I'd see like Microsoft would have they'd have these demos where somebody would be in a plant and they put on the HoloLens, and what that is a lens where you can you broadcast so the viewer sees what they're looking at, but they also can see, like, you could put a manual up, or you could actually see the person on the screen talking notes. They can draw circles. And in our industry, where we have to drive a lot, we have to justify the travel, and usually it's something simple. We see a massive amount of opportunity where we could put a HoloLens in a building downtown, and where you already have stationary engineers. They may not be technicians, but they're capable. And that's a service now that we can provide. They put on the lens and call someone from our shop. We never even have to leave the office. And so we're charging for the time we're there, charging for the service. You know, it's a different type of thing, but it's way more efficient than driving there, because I can tell you, if I could take driving, and the reality is we have to drive, right? We're never going to get rid of driving. We might maybe flying in the future, but for now it's driving. We're not going to get rid of that, but if I could get rid of it, I could probably do 5 times as much work with the staff that I have. So if I can, so any way technology can help me to help them, I can sell the service, they're doing it, I need less people. And I told you, like when I first listed some of the challenges that we have, manpower is a challenge. That helps to alleviate that problem right there.
Yeah.
It also reduces the chances of an accident, or there's all kinds of, it's just endless of the benefits from that. So that's one. That's the HoloLens. I know a lot of people are chasing IoT technology now. It's embedded itself into the air conditioning industry. I've worked with you guys to look at some of the opportunities. But I mean, so we're talking about technology where if a thermostat in an office goes out of range, a predetermined point, it contacts Dynamics, books a work order on Dynamics, our dispatcher sees it, and now instead of our customer calling us and saying, hey, it's hot in this office, which may have taken them 3 or 4 days to figure that out, and it's too late at that point, now we're calling them saying, hey, it's hot in that office. Right? And they're like, what? And then, I mean, you want to talk about customer service, call them before they call you. And so that helps. It not only helps with, because it's impressive, or that it's a good service, it also helps with scheduling, because the faster we know about a problem, the more time we have to react, right? And it's not like we're not reacting when it's an emergency, we're calling before it's an emergency. And they could always say no, but at least we're calling. It's also a good excuse for us to be in touch with our customers. So this is the important thing with this. I know other companies that are chasing that technology, and they have labs, and they're putting, like big companies, they're putting a lot of effort into this. And then I get Dynamics, and I look, and there's a IoT button, and so it's already there. It's already, you guys have already come in and showed us how you can, with vibration. We have like industrial customers and things like that. So just it's endless with the possibilities. And like I said, it's a huge system, and I think the hardest thing is just figuring out where to draw the line, right? Because it's just like a kid in a candy store. I want it all.
And that's my actually next question, especially for the audience, because you mentioned that there are lots of small HVAC firms, and then there are some big firms. And so who should bring in technology, and when? And how do the HVAC business owners make that decision? So what advice do you have for them?
I would say for a small air conditioning company, because obviously there is a cost, right? And they do have to weigh out the cost. When an air conditioning company starts, it's usually a 1 or 2 man shop, and I don't really think a 1 or 2 man shop needs a CRM. They could keep all their notes in a little notebook in their pocket, but there's a point, and it's not the same point for everyone, but there's a point at which they're not moving forward anymore, and they need to. That's what I always give is advice. I say you need to really pay attention, because if you want to grow, and I hate to say it, but you have to grow, right? I know companies that have mandates. You're either growing or shrinking, and shrinking is not an option, right? Yeah. But you can't stay the same size. And if you stay the same size, then it's just a job, and it's just, you can work it until you retire, and you're not going to have anything to sell, or you're not going to have anything to trade on. So if you want your little air conditioning company to turn into a functioning business, then I would say do it as soon as possible. There's different partners. You guys aren't the only partner. I've looked at the other partners, and I found value in you guys, and whoever does it, they need to be able to see that value, so that it's a nice system, but I wouldn't want to deploy something that I didn't think I could make money with. And I make money with it, and I think I was making money with it when I had 15 employees, so maybe 10. So I didn't have, and I know like some of the other partners would ask me, well, how many employees do you have? And I'd say 10, and they'd say, oh no, you got to have 500 to work with us, right? So, and that was discouraging, but I did it, and I can tell you I did it, and it paid off, because you do make money with it, right? We always think, oh, it's a convenience thing. It's like hiring another person. We think, well, it's going to be convenient, but it's going to cost me another $100,000 a year. But what people have a hard time calculating is that employee is going to generate more revenue, right? So they pay for themselves. And as far as I'm concerned, Dynamics pays for itself.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you in terms of the return on investment, because you have done it in phases. So for the first phase where you just did the sales piece, how was your return on, was it like a few months, 6 months? Is there some number that you could share with the audience that would give them some perspective on how quickly they can get their return on the investment on technology here?
So I could tell you a number, but I'd probably be making it up. So, but let me just tell you, I can still answer your question, because I come from a mechanical background, right? I'm not a finance guy. I deal with financing now. I hate it, but it's just, it's what, when I first signed on for this, if someone told me that I would be, success would be sitting in my office signing off on invoices all day long, that's not what I got into this business for, right? So I liked being out there in the field and working and all that. But I'll tell you this, I think that my payback or my return is unmeasurable, because it's not just about a financial return. I didn't have a system before, and I couldn't come up with a system, right? I'd lay in bed at night and I'd cook them up in my brain, but I couldn't deploy them because I was too busy running my business. So when I deployed field service, I think my return was instant. I instantly had a process that I never had before, right? Now, if I was replacing one process for the other, then I would need to calculate, well, but I instantly was in business. I was finally in business. And I think that's the important thing to understand. And I think it was, maybe instantly is not, it might be a little aggressive, but I wasn't sitting there a year later thinking, when am I going to see something out of this? I was, a month later, everyone was going, oh my goodness, this is incredible the way this works. I hired a salesperson recently from a big company, a national company, and she came in and I ran her through it, and I'm sitting there on my computer showing her, and I look over at her and her mouth was hanging open, because she's just blown away. And here, compared to her company, my company is a little tiny company, and she's like, man, your little tiny company is leaps and bounds ahead of the company that I just came from. So how do you measure that?
No, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Last question. We also have some questions from the audience, so and please keep them coming. Thank you so much for using the question section there. The last question that I have for you is, so how has your experience been with Bold Construct and Alpha Board and Dynamics overall? Any final comments on that?
So I didn't really have anything to compare you guys to, except for that I told you the story with the guy that said this isn't the system for you. So you guys were definitely a step up from that. So I didn't know what to expect. I can tell you like what the process was, and then how I felt about that and how we got to where we're at though. So like what I really liked was there was a salesperson that worked for you guys that came down and visited with us, kind of went through our process, and then I met you, and I met a couple other people. When you guys came down and you spent time understanding our business, that's key, right? Because there's 1,000 people out there that do the same thing, but you guys really try to understand the way my business works, and you helped me to come up with a process. The important thing to understand is that when we got that module done, I'm not locked in to Alpha, right? I could go to another partner. There's plenty of partners. Just call Microsoft and they'll give you another partner. So I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know, was it a good experience, or was it a bad experience? I mean, I got a system and it works. So I went, when we got done with that, before we deployed, or before we kicked off field service, I went and talked to other partners, and I came back, right? And because I knew, I could tell right away now what the difference was. And one of them was the other businesses, they basically had turned took in Dynamics and created their own CAN application, and I'm not looking for CAN, right? I'm looking for customized. I wanted something that would do what I wanted to do, and that's what you guys wanted to do. Everything that I got excited about, you guys got excited about. When we started talking about, you know, digital controllers for air conditioning, you guys came down, you brought a computer scientist down, and it wasn't, I never got a bill for that, right? It was more, you guys got into it like I got into it, and we're still into it, right? Anytime I've had an issue, I've been able to call you or one of your associates, and I get a response because you take a lot of pride in your product, and you're not going to be happy until I'm happy. And that's been my honest experience so far, and that's why I decided to keep going with you guys and going module after module after module, because you guys, the bottom line is when I'm done, I can very easily see how a person could spend a lot of time on a system like this and think that they're getting something, and when they get done, it's not what they expected, and it could be a disaster. And I haven't had a disaster. And anytime I felt, you know, obviously I get uneasy because I'm not a computer guy. You've always reached out, you've always spent time, and I can tell that you're really into your quality because it's you calling. It's you following up. It's not someone that you're sending to do your dirty work for you. So it's been a great experience for me, and you know, here's the thing. I'd say I would do it again, but I am doing it again, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm just going from module to module. I'm going to go on to the bold build or whatever you call it, bold construct. And because as my business grows, my needs change. And as my needs change, you guys can customize for me and create a system that will perfectly match my business.
All right, thank you. And David, obviously, it's been an amazing experience. I have two questions here for you. One is from David Sully. His question is, do you use Office 365 and Teams in addition to Dynamics?
Yes. Yeah, we use the whole Microsoft. So we have Office 365 account, and Dynamics, it just becomes another one of the apps that's attached to that account for us.
Okay, and then the second question is from Brandon. What has been your feedback from your techs using this kind of technology?
So we're still ready to deploy field service. So the impact has been to the salespeople more than it's been to the techs. We have brought techs in and kind of like kept them involved in the process, and we've got input from the techs, so that as we do things, you know, when we deploy the system, it's always the techs are going, why doesn't it do this and why doesn't it do that? So we've had the opportunity to get them involved and make sure, and we've got the dispatchers involved. It's pretty neat, right? We're not just taking a system and throwing it in their lap and saying, there you go, let's make it work. They've all collaborated to build it. So we're very optimistic, and the feedback from the test that the techs have done has been really good.
Awesome, thank you. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move towards the demos that we want to show David. So before I do that, a quick overview. So we are talking about Bold Construct. Like David mentioned, they have completely set up the sales piece, and they are now on the process of rolling out the field service piece. But essentially, from the module standpoint, like he mentioned, you can kind of cover all phases. You can do sales and marketing, you can do pre-production, production, post-production. And the most important thing is that it integrates all these processes. So you're not using different systems. It's just one system. It can have different apps so that different users have specific content fed into them. So it's easier, but it's not that it's a different platform. So you can do it all in one. And with that, what we have done mostly, a few things that I would say we have kind of worked with David on is just focus on what's most important to start with, get that fixed. And then we had some sessions where we streamlined the workflows, got more input from David and the team. And then we just started small. So like David was saying, we started from sales, then we did the estimation, then we enhanced the opportunity, then we enhanced the estimation side, then we are doing the field service, then we did the financial piece. So it has been a journey. You don't have to do it all at once. And with that, what I want to do is I want to show you some of the demos here. So just give me 1 second. Here, I'll pull up the slide deck. So this is the first demo video that I want to share with you guys. This is essentially the estimation piece that we have now automated. And this is not the complete estimation. This is more like when you have a field agent out and they see an opportunity. So you see it is an iPad-based application that Voigtco Mechanical is using. So I, as a field agent, let's say go out there and I see that there is an opportunity for air conditioning services. I can select any of the customers that I have in the system. So this is integrated with the dynamic system, which gives you a whole customer management and opportunity management. So I pick up my account and I can pick up my contact in here in my iPad application. And because I could be on any of the addresses that I have for this customer in my system, so I just put in the site address where I'm at as part of providing this service to them. And when I've keyed in this information, I can just select what kind of a service I'm doing. Now, why is that service type important? It's not just important because I'm creating this service request. It's also important because down the road, Voigtco Mechanical using this can do some reporting, which is out of the box, by the way, in Dynamics. And they can break their total service revenue and say, okay, how much of that was air conditioning services? How much of that was replacement? How much that was just ongoing service that you do? So that gives you a lot of granular breakdown structure that you can report on. So they can obviously put in anything in here in the description. I'm just showcasing here how this information can be keyed in using your keypad on your iPad. So you can put in anything in here. For this particular example, it's just saying that condenser water pump, 40 horsepower, and then there's a wire replacement, I think, for this demo that we used. So I'll just key that in, and then you see it's a guided process. We just click on the next button, and this is where the estimation module comes in. And here they can select what type of a customer asset it is. So I'm going to just say custom, and as soon as we do that, all these parts materials become available. And they can key in the quantity and they can key in the cost here. So as that comes in, you will see that this estimated price will automatically start updating. So all the materials that are required for this can be keyed in. Then we can go in here and we can select the labor and we can put in different labor cost as well, and that gets added to the estimated price as well. And when I feel that, okay, I'm good, and that imagine that I am on site now and I'm keying in this information. So it doesn't take more than a few minutes. I click next again, and I can add photos in here. So you can just go and you can take photos or attach photos, and then you hit next, and it shows you a summary at this stage. And when this summary is ready, you just hit the create button. And essentially what it is doing at the back end for you is that it is creating an estimate for you. So it is going to generate the estimate. And because it's integrated with your backend dynamic system, so all this information will show up into your dynamic system as well. Anything you want to add to that, David?
No, sorry, I was muted. No, you did. You went through it right.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to highlight before I went to the second piece of it, which is more like opportunity management on the dynamic side of things, is primarily that what you saw there, the product side of things in there, they are configured in Dynamics. And the pricing updates can happen right there. The product updates can happen right there. The back office team can take care of that. So as people are on the field, they don't have to think on the fly about this information. Same is the case with labor hours as well as the labor cost. So all of that is pre-configured and can be refreshed as well. Anything you want to add around that, David, before I move on to showing the opportunity management within Dynamics?
No, you're good.
Okay. So here, what happens is that as soon as they hit create, you will see that very soon here, the estimation will start showing up. So if I refresh it, you see this says air conditioning service. And this is essentially that opportunity that got created while the field service guy was on site and then created that estimate. Now, this kind of showcases the process that Voigtco Mechanical is using. So you can see that there are some required fields that are being keyed in. So for example, sales rep needs to be put in. It's the person who would be taking ownership of that. The opportunity type needs to be put in, the likelihood of creating that. And then you can move this process along. And again, you can have reporting on the sales process. So David at any time can go and see where different opportunities are sitting at what stage. These are the stages that we have. And the estimate kind of comes in from that. So 3,933 is what you saw in that iPad app. That's what you see in the dynamics, and it's real time. So it's all happening live, connected, and that information flows right in. And now the sales guy can take ownership of this from here. They can go in, and we talked about, David explained to you how the proposal generation is automated. So not only the estimation is automated, but you just click this button, generate proposal, and you will see that it will generate a nicely formatted proposal for you, which is templatized. So anybody can key in any template, or if Voigtko Mechanical wants to change their template, they can change that as well. And this proposal that gets generated, it goes into the notes section. So as I come in here in the notes and I refresh this on the timeline, you would see that it is going to show that it has a new proposal. And just quickly, I can even show you this proposal here. So it's going to open up the Word document that gets generated, and it has like a nice formatted version, and it's ready to be sent out. And on the sending out side of things, so you can fill in the fields, who is sending out the proposal, what is the date when it was sent out, when does the proposal expire, and all of that is automated as well. And I think icing on the top is what you will see in the next step, that it's integrated with an electronic signature system. So I'm just keying in some information here on the required fields. So I'll just, customer needs quick service for for replacing their compressor or condenser. So then what we do is, if you go to the next stage here, you would see that this is ready to be sent out through DocuSign. So I can just go in here and select send via DocuSign. And there's an integration with DocuSign. As soon as it gets signed by the recipient, it automatically is going to close this opportunity. And that's where a work order can be created, or like David was saying, if you want to hop onto the project side of thing under Board Construct, you can have the project site created, and that can be then used for you to track your project hours on that as well. So that is kind of how the sales flow works end to end. It started from estimation, and then it ends here when your proposal gets signed by your customer. So that's what I wanted to cover, at least on the sales side of things. David, is there anything else you would like to add that I did not cover?
Yeah. One of the glories of that, what you were just showing, was that's the app, and you say sales associate, I think is the word you use, but for us, that's what we send the technicians out with. And that's what's really neat about it, is because we cut a lot of office work out of that when we let the technician take the lead. And what's important to understand is that process that you just ran through, that takes that opportunity, and it requires someone in the office to review it before it gets sent out. But as our business grows and as our business changes, then that will change. And for example, like with that, we might say, once everybody's comfortable with it and they've gone through the learning curve of estimating, because technicians aren't necessarily estimators, we can give them a little freedom, and we could say, well, you could send that one direct, or we could say we could put a threshold of a dollar amount, and if it's less than $10,000, you can send it directly, and it doesn't need secondary approval. So if that process isn't perfect for you, it doesn't matter. That's our process, right? Anybody can change the process. That's what I like about Dynamics.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that. I'm going to go to the next slide here. So this is just based on some of our experience with Bold Construct, not specifically for Voigtko Mechanical, but we strongly believe that you can save close to 2.5 million just on task automation. I think David referenced that when he said that you have people who are more efficient and you need less people to do more work. But I think that's just the quantification of that. Then you can eliminate a lot of rework because you have processes and you have documented results. There's the whole BI module where you can see how things are happening as an executive, and then it's one integrated system. And that's where I think David also alluded to that when he said that they were on QuickBooks. Not that they could not have integrated it with QuickBooks, they can, but in that journey, it depends upon where you are. So when you want to get to that integrated system. In terms of where we are, so we have free trials available for this. You can try it for 2 weeks. Like David said, we're more than happy to jump on calls and come in and have discussions with you to understand your specific processes and then map those processes to Bold Construct. And that's exactly what he was explaining, that this is Voigtko's process, but you can very easily have your process incorporated in there as well. I do have one more question, David, that just came in. It says that a bit surprised that you're using iPad. Would it also work with Surface? I can take that. It's a Power App, so absolutely it works with Surface as well. But it also works on iPad, and that's the beauty of Power App. It is device agnostic. So you would have probably the same flow in there, but it depends upon what your end users are more comfortable with or what devices you have provided them. But it is essentially device agnostic and should work with all of them. I have here a couple of more questions very quickly. I covered whether Dynamics has a marketing module, so it does, and the whole flow can be automated there as well. And there's a question on field service, David. You said that you're rolling it out. What do you anticipate in terms of the challenges with that rollout? Because you mentioned that your team has been using other system in the past, and now you have seen it's almost close to the rollout. Do you anticipate any technical challenges for your field team?
There will be, I mean, we'll have to do some training. I would anticipate that it'll be a little bit, we did it before, right? We did it with the other system, and we don't like the other system. So I can't imagine that it's going to be that much harder. We onboard people all the time, and they learn the system. There's some things, there's some things about Dynamics that are it's a different thought process, and I mean that in a good way, right? Because we operate the systems, that's typical systems, just the same way, and Dynamics it's a different angle that you think about things, and once you get everybody to think that way, it's a thought process and it's a behavior, and that's one thing you taught me, right? When we deployed Sales Hub, I said, well, how am I going to get people to do this? And you said, what's behavior, right? And you have to drive the behavior. You tell them what the expectation is, and they can do it, right? Other people do it. So if they don't do it, it's going to be because they don't want to do it. And then you know what you're dealing with there, right? It's not a technology issue. That's a employee issue at that point. And by the way, I just wanted to say something real quick. Since we've been talking, so many little things have popped into my head of little like customizations and little things that we've done that are really neat. I don't think a 2-hour webinar we could talk about all those little things, but it's just endless, the little things like the way someone asked if we use 365 Office, and then how Dynamics integrates with Outlook, and we can operate a lot of Dynamics on Outlook, or how our techs can take a picture at a supply house of an invoice. It'll take all those items and put them right on the, it makes it easier. It's not harder.
Yeah.
So that's what we're anticipating when we go to deploy.
All right. So I think we're coming to the end of this webinar. I don't have any other questions in the question bar. So I'll just wrap it up by saying that thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you were able to see Whiteco Mechanical's journey. And last but not least, I want to thank you, David. It's a huge honor to have you, of course, as a customer, as well as for your willingness to share your story with us. But even more so because you had COVID today and you were still able to hop on. That means a lot to me as well as to the whole company. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us.
Right, it was my pleasure. You guys have become like part of our company. I feel that way. So happy to do it. And I do it again if you ask.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.